everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to Scribe Podcast from Scribe Magazine. And we're doing some Scribe talk here as I have the absolute pleasure to be speaking to Jonathan Wolff, composer, and I would say TV legend. Now, Jonathan, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today and give you a chance to talk a little bit about some of the things that our viewers might have heard of your work.
Thanks, Shane. I appreciate you having me on here. I retired a few years back, but before that, I was the composer on 75 primetime network TV series, including Will and Grace and Seinfeld.
Which I find very exciting. I've been a big Seinfeld fan, and it's one of those kind of iconic scores and especially themes that like you hear it, you know exactly where that came from. So if anyone ever wondered, that's the wonderful work that Jonathan here did. And to kind of get things started, is what was your journey to becoming a composer and doing the work that you did?
I moved to LA in 1976. I was 17 years old, and I had really good training and really good experience for a kid of my age. Mm-hmm. But I had no family in Hollywood, and I'm not pretty. So for the next 10 years, my career was a seemingly scattered patchwork of overlapping assignments for the Hollywood studios. These assignments served as essential on-the-job training for my eventual career as a TV composer until my full-time composing career began. You asked about my journey.
Yep.
The studios appreciated my skills and background and talent and treated me like a Swiss Army multi-purpose utility tool for musical chores. My jobs, boy, I was mostly a studio musician for other composers performing on their recordings, but I was also an accompanist, arranger, recording engineer, an orchestrator, synth programmer, music producer, music copyist, conductor for other composer scores, a sketch pianist, music editor, electronic sound designer, a party pianist, an on-set production music consultant. You get it. If it smelled like music, I took the job.
There you go.
And because I was working toward my eventual goal of being a full-time TV composer whenever possible, I also tried to get episodic assignments on TV shows that needed special music material or songs written. In 1986, which is 10 years after I moved to LA, I sent letters, actual letters with envelopes and stamps, because there was no email, to all of these really great folks, the studio music execs who had been so kind and generous and supportive, and who had shown confidence in my ability and faith in my professionalism. And I sent them these letters that said, thank you for trusting me with all of those musical chore assignments. Now, stop that. I am no longer available for those assignments. I am a composer. And then I held my breath.
Yeah.
You know, I may have, last 10 years of my life, may have just nuked it all. But as it turned out, as those letters arrived at their destinations all over Hollywood, people shrugged and said, gee, that's too bad. He was a good utility guy. And they started recommending me and hiring me for their composing assignments. I declared myself a composer. I put it out into the universe. This is what I want. And the universe accepted that. And for me, that was a pretty good lesson for me to know what it is I wanted. And that is how I began as a composer. I bought a building. I'd been working a lot in those 10 years. I slept very little. So I made plenty of money. So I had money to buy this beautiful commercial building in Burbank, California, on Burbank Boulevard in the heart of Studio District. And I built for myself what I dreamed of, a job where people would pay me good money to create excellent music using only the best equipment in a beautiful setting. And since that job was not in sight, I built it for myself and started a company so that I could be a composer. Did that answer your question, Shane?
Absolutely. And I think that's a really inspiring story. And like, I work at a college full time, and I always tell students, it's like, don't say no to opportunities. And it definitely sounded like you took advantage of a lot of opportunities for growth and learning over 10 years. And then, you know what? You knew your worth and you were like, this is what I want to do. And it worked out for you. And that's really awesome. So I appreciate you telling that story.
At some
Now,
point, invite me. I'll come and lecture at your college.
that would be pretty cool. We'll talk about that.
It's what I do now, by the way,
Yeah.
since I retired. I speak at a lot of universities, music conservatories, law schools.
It's pretty cool. That's awesome. And obviously, through all those experiences making your music, what were some of the big influences on you creating your music?
Having a wide range of eclectic musical experiences was a valuable asset during my career. Also, now the lectures and concerts that I do are way more fun because of that. The complete list of my musical influences is way too long for this interview, Shane, but I'll give short lists. Among my first musical memories, I was probably 4 years old in 1963 or so when I first heard the Pink Panther.
Oh.
And in an instant, I was hooked on Henry Mancini, hooked on music for picture and cartoons, and hooked on jazz.
Yep.
Checked a lot of boxes for this 4-year-old. And right after that, Mary Poppins came out, and those Sherman Brothers were schooling me on clever lyrics and melodic hooks. So that's my first memories of being really influenced by music. And as I grew, I leaned towards jazz, my early jazz piano influences, because I was a young jazz pianist. The usual suspects: Bill Evans, Oscar Peterson, Chick Corea, Herbie, Ramsey, Duke, McCoy, Art Tatum. I go on. But at the same time, I was into Keith Emerson and Billy Preston and Elton John and Joe Zawinul and Richard T. So there are all of these wonderful role models for me as a young musician who influenced my musical sensibilities. Also, those popular songs and the rock music on the radio in the 60s and 70s powerfully influenced my world. It seemed that each experience of my young life was being narrated, Walter Mitty style, by those songs on the radio. And I, when I needed to seek answers to those overwhelming questions of youth from my heroes and teachers, those songwriters, I found those answers on the radio. People like Stevie Wonder and James Taylor and Lennon McCartney, Elton John, Carole King, Billy Joel, Joni Mitchell's. It's a long list, but these were my real influences musically, and they helped shape me as a young kid. And each lesson learned from these songs, each song prepared me for, and sometimes propelled me towards my future as a Hollywood musician and composer.
Absolutely. And I think that's great with the bringing up the Pink Panther. It's like, could hear that. It's such an impactful little theme for the Pink Panther that's so iconic that, kids today probably hear that. It's like, we know what the Pink Panther is, and, being able to hit on both the score and the jazz and all those kinds of things. And obviously growing up in that particular time, it was an amazing time for music, so many great artists and so much to learn from. Now, what have been some of your favorite contributions to shows over the years?
My favorite contribution to a series was usually the theme music.
Yeah,
not just because that's where the money is,
Mhm.
The theme, you write it once and it broadcasts over and over and over and over again as long as the series has legs. But also because theme music serves a number of functional and practical roles in the success
Mhm.
of a TV show. A TV theme is a first impression sales tool to help pitch a show, a new show, to an audience. And a good theme is important to a show's identity and often helps tell the story. A theme has entertainment value as a presentation tool, just as in the theater curtain and the announcer
Yeah.
before a performance prepares the audience for an entertainment experience. TV theme music announces each episode, heightens your sense of anticipation, and draws you into that mind space that you visit while watching your show. TV theme sometimes helps identify the location or historic period of the show. For
Mhm.
example, my theme for Saved by the Bell, the college years, helped that show transition the lives of those characters
Mhm.
from high school to college. And I did it lyrically. Sometimes the theme not only reflects the show's sensibility, but also welcomes the audience by
Mhm.
bridging the gap between the show's set and the viewer's living room. I remember as a young guy watching Welcome Back, Kotter and just
Mhm.
wanting to hear that theme every week say, Welcome back.
Absolutely. And you bring up a lot of important points, and like themes for shows can be such a big impactful thing. It's like you hear the theme for Seinfeld, it's just like Seinfeld. You know what it is.
Yeah,
And
even with your eyes closed, a good TV theme, like no other production element, has
yeah,
Pavlovian powers that
absolutely.
transport you into the world of the show itself. And hopefully, those Pavlovian powers extend to when you got your head in the refrigerator in another room,
Yep.
you hear that sound, and instantly your brain goes, "Ooh, let's watch that." Sometimes TV themes are woven into the fabric of our personal experiences, like the soundtrack of our lives. We've already talked about
Mhm.
how the Pink Panther for me serves as a pop cultural touchstone, marking the time and place in my life. Other of those themes that do that for me are Mission Impossible and
Yeah.
Sanford and Son, Dragnet, Peter Gunn, Beverly Hillbillies.
Mhm.
They just push a button, a happy button in me. People hold warm, fuzzy connections, as I do, to the TV themes in their memories.
Absolutely. And like I know I grew up in the 90s and Seinfeld was one of them. And like I used to watch Seinfeld when I came home from school, King of Queens, Home Improvement, like hearing just that grunt of Tim Allen's like, you know what you're watching, and it's right there. And
Yeah, it's
you
my
know,
friend and colleague Dan Folliart
yeah,
created that.
and it's like your transport, like you know what you're watching. It's there. And it's so interesting because like I'll admit, I have Spotify. I have a whole entire playlist that are just some of my favorite themes from TV shows and stuff like that. And it's even more important, I think, especially in streaming today, to come up with a theme that's impactful because you know you have that pesky little skip button. And it's just like if it's not connecting with you, people are just gonna skip on right over it. But there's definitely shows that I know I listen to the whole entire theme and entrance because it's like it just part of the experience watching the show.
I
So
love that. Thank you for noticing the work
mhm.
that theme composers do. There's some really great themes out there. And I hope people will appreciate that and take a moment to pause to let the theme do its job introducing the show. Yeah,
Because you do.
For Seinfeld, the theme was, well, here's how it worked.
Yep.
I get this phone call from Jerry Seinfeld, and he described to me the opening credits for his new show. It was Jerry doing stand-up in a club. You hear him telling jokes, you see him telling jokes, and you hear the people laugh. And he wanted theme music to go along with it. And in that first phone call, I said, Jerry, that sounds like an audio conflict. It's a recipe for music and your voice to cancel each other out. Because remember, at the time in the late 80s, theme music was melodic, a lot of silly lyrics and sassy saxophones.
Yep.
Guilty. I created a lot of that kind of music in those days, but as I told him on the phone, not going to work here. So how about this, Jerry? What if every time there's one of your openings and you're doing your monologue, your comedy routine, what if we treat your human voice telling jokes as the melody for the Seinfeld theme? Every monologue, every joke, every opening will be a variation on the theme. And my job, Jerry, will be to accompany you in a nice, fun, musical way that will elevate the energy and the comedy of what's going on and serve as an instant identifier for your show, a sonic brand of sorts. But it's got to be built around your voice. And he just sort of said, how's that work? And I said, well, for example, instead of using trumpets and drums and guitars, whatever, that I usually use to write themes, how about to go along with the organic human nature of your voice, if I use organic human sounds that I can make with my mouth and tongue and lips and finger snaps to create a current, an energy underneath you that won't interfere with you, which might blend well with your human voice, like this. And I had his attention. Sampling as a musical tool was in its infancy at that time, and I really, really wanted to use it in a practical way for some theme music. So I thought this is a good chance to do it. It was, I think, a Saturday, and I told Jerry, come on over. I'm here by myself at my office. Let me bring along some video of you doing stand-up, and I'll work one up for you. We'll see if it works. And so he came over, and I sampled some lips and tongues, and I said, now, remember in vaudeville how the rim shots would punctuate a joke, let the audience know it's time to laugh, and transition the comic into the next joke. I can do that, but I'm going to use something that had not yet enjoyed celebrity status as a solo instrument, slap bass. I first had to explain to him, here's what a slap bass is. You hit and it's kind of a weird nasal, annoying sound. And I showed him how we could use that to weave in and out of his comedy. And I created a bass line so simple, so basic, so sophomoric that it could stop and start without falling apart. It was like Lego music that I could build around the timings of his jokes and his punchlines and the overall timing of each monologue to modularly manipulate these musical elements to fit each monologue. Now, I knew that that was going to obligate me to recreate a recording of the Seinfeld theme for every monologue. But at the time, there were only 4 episodes. So it wasn't a long-term commitment I was making here. And that is how that particular theme was born, to function as an accompaniment to Jerry's stand-up and to identify the show and help move it along between scenes with transitions, kind of like this. By the way, we've been given permission by Water Tower Records to
Awesome.
use music from Seinfeld. Water Tower Records is who the record company for the Seinfeld official soundtrack album that we can use music from while we're talking, if it goes there.
Yep. And that's such an awesome story about how that all evolved and being able to create a very unique theme that goes specifically with the show. And that's the whole entire point, is creating that kind of identity. And obviously Seinfeld was such a big phenomenon when it was out. And what was it like working on a show like that?
Seinfeld was not my first hit show.
Mm-hmm.
I had before that worked on Who's the Boss on ABC and Married with Children on Fox. So I had had a taste of what it was like to work on a hit show. You get bigger budgets, you get a little more respect from the networks but as Seinfeld gained momentum, bigger audience, more cultural impact, Seinfeld writers gained more swagger. They became unafraid, fearless to push the storylines and the characters' behaviors further and further off center, often spiraling to the very edge of ridiculous and unpredictable situations, which often created for me situations for me to throw in with the comedy, creating eclectic special material for those wacky situations. And this was born of it being a hit show, that we were able to get this wild and wacky with it and not get pushback from the approval food chain of executives. Things like one common comedy trope in Seinfeld was the chase scenes. Jerry chasing Newman through the building, or the geriatric gang chasing George on their rascals. Yeah, here's one. The cable guy chasing Kramer through New York. It gave me an opportunity to score these scenes. I treated them as if they were serious chase scenes from action movies. It was all tongue-in-cheek stuff. But it gave me an opportunity to give gravity and seriousness to the silliness that was going on screen.
Which, especially with that juxtaposition of you making this very serious, intense, like you just playing that music right there, I'm like, this seems like I'm watching some kind of like Terminator movie or something, where it's just like, I'm being chased for my life, and then you see Kramer running away from a bunch of people on scooters. And
and the fact that we were a hit show, and they would do these weird, surreal, just unusual, like here's one where Peterman had gone off the deep end in a Burmese jungle. Elaine had to go find him. So I scored the scene with weird, odd, unusual, surreal, otherworldly instrumentation to go along with this. It was kind of an homage to a famous scene in Apocalypse Now. And it gave me a chance to throw in with these ridiculous scenes. All right. Well, I'll do one more just for fun. And only because we're a hit show, we could do stuff like George's photo shoot. And Kramer's yelling, "Feel the beat," or "A lover boy." Be a man, be a man. such a ridiculous scene, but it gave me an opportunity to get involved. And Jennifer Crittenden, who wrote that episode, she just said, this is supposed to be sexy, throbbing, erotic. And I'm going, okay, I get it.
Except it's George.
Except it's George in his underwear. And it's on the album for one reason, so that Seinfeld fans could recreate that underwear photo shoot scene in their home using the music with it. So it was, opportunities like that came up for me regularly as the show became more and more popular.
Well, and I think that's a fun example of what my next question would be in terms of being able to use the music composition to like capture character. And obviously, in a scene like that where you're having a photo shoot, you would think you would have something more sexual, sensual kind of thing, but like it's George. It's awkward and just all about that, and being able to capture the humor of the fact that it's George Costanza in his like tidy whities getting a photo shoot. So
yeah, it was it was one of my favorite series to work on because of that, because I got to just throw in with the comedy so often.
Well, and it seems like that kind of show leaves it open so much to be able to be creative with it, because the show's so creative and outlandish, and you don't think twice about it because it's Seinfeld. Anything could happen.
Yeah, outlandish. The Wigmaster episode where Kramer one at a time picks up these wardrobe items like a walking cane, and he borrows the Technicolor dream coat from the Wigmaster, and then he gets a pimp hat that was blowing in the wind, and he ends up looking like a stereotype pimp walking down the street. And if that wasn't enough cultural slurs, I added to it with this hip hop street groove.
I just imagine Michael Richards just walking down the street strutting that whole entire scene. It's fantastic.
That was one of the perks of being the composer on Seinfeld, is I got to create music that I knew was going to be, Michael Richards was going to move to it.
Yeah.
That's a perk, because he elevates every scene. He elevated my music often, by just moving to it. So yeah, that was a good thing about this particular job.
Well, and those are some great examples of being able to play with the characters and being able to maximize that. What are some of you feel like some of your best examples of score that you're able to really convey the emotions of watching Seinfeld and having some of those kinds of good moments?
There were a couple of moments like that. All right, here's one. This is from the hot tub episode. In a weird, surreal, distorted reality moment, Elaine wanders the cold night streets alone, upset, troubled about her writer's block. I scored the scene cinematically.
Yep.
The music is at first worried, strange, lonely. He's mentally fatigued and confused.
I feel like I'm watching a David Lynch.
Yeah, exactly. It was Lynchian. Then it dawns upon her the answer to her Himalayan walking shoes assignment, and she emerges triumphant.
There you go. Absolutely, it's fantastic. And
you asked compositions that convey emotions. There were a whole bunch of them in that, and it was kind of Lynchian, that moment. I that's one thing. There are a number of things I admired about David Lynch and Angelo Badalamenti, his composer.
Yeah.
One was that long relationship that Angelo had with David. They were loyal co-workers, and the more they worked together, the more they clicked together. And I learned from that and intentionally sought out relationships with directors that would last beyond the current project so that we could get to know each other better. So thanks for mentioning David
Yeah.
Lynch there.
Well, and I think that's such a great thing of when you have like a director or creator of a show or film and you just have that long-standing relationship where it becomes part of the whole experience of feeling their films. And like I know on my YouTube channel I just went through every single Spielberg film, and you know what? Would it be a Spielberg film without
Without
John
John
Williams?
Williams, yeah, absolutely. I was blessed. I
Mhm.
had those kind of relationships with a number of excellent A-list Hollywood directors, like Tom Sharonis, Jim Burrows. I don't know how many series I did with Jimmy, but it was always an honor to get that
Absolutely.
call for another James Burrows production.
Mhm.
Jamie Widows, Assad Kalata. There was a number of Jerry Cohen. These were
Mhm.
all excellent, excellent directors who I was just really privileged to work with over and over again.
Yeah, and that's such an awesome collaboration. I know, like personally, my favorite directors are the Coen brothers, and there wouldn't be a vibe without Carter Burwell's
Yeah.
music just playing through, and it just matches perfectly to their personality and just creates that atmosphere about it.
Yeah, the Coen brothers movies are religious liturgy in our house.
Very nice. I always appreciate finding and meeting Coen brothers fans. So
Oh man. Yeah,
now,
we'll occasionally have a Coen brothers if we're on vacation or something, a film fest.
mhm,
Same thing with Tarantino. We'll just play a bunch of
absolutely.
movies.
He basically makes his own score and composition, just bringing in all the different things that have influenced him and bringing them all together, sampling different scores. And I know one of my favorite scores from any film, and probably in the past like 10 years, was The Hateful Eight, when he had Ennio
Oh,
Morricone come on,
yeah,
and
what a masterpiece that movie is. Yeah,
which the expectation is you get Ennio Morricone to come on here to do this big Western score, but instead you get this murder mystery score, and it's just like the and it's just like building up from the beginning, and it's just like this is a whole entire other vibe than I was expecting from this, but it fits so perfectly and brings you into the film.
yeah. I was probably remiss when you asked me about my influences. I failed to mention those great film composers like Ennio Morricone and
Yeah,
John Williams, who so influenced me.
absolutely. Now, I thought this would be a fun question. Now, obviously, you've worked on so many different shows that so many people love, but what's a show that you kind of wish that you had an opportunity to lend some of your talents to?
Shane, I appreciate you asking because that means I get to fantasize a little bit
Yeah.
about me playing, putting on another hat. But I had a nice long turn at bat,
Mhm.
hit the ball hard, a lot. 75 primetime network TV series. I'm happy with my stats. And
Yeah.
I'm genuinely happy for my composer colleagues
Yeah.
who also did well. I'm glad they were on those shows that, oh, maybe that would have been fun to take a swing at. Um, so, no, I don't really have those kind of wishes. I'm happy with the career I had. So I'm sorry, that's kind of a cop out answer, but no, I don't see
You know what?
myself
The
inserting myself into any of those other great shows that had great music.
you know what? The career that you've had, you have every right to give that answer because you have plenty of experiences. So, but I guess my last question for you, and I think this is a great question to wrap up with, is what's your biggest advice for somebody who's an up and coming musician who wants to be a composer?
I'm going to answer it two ways, Shane, if
Mhm.
that's okay.
Absolutely.
One, in addition to your musical superpowers,
Mhm.
take an honest inventory of your people skills. Having a great demo reel, cool social media and a slick website is nice and important. But people don't hire websites. People don't hire demo reels. People hire
People.
People. Relationships, and we've talked about this a little bit already,
Yeah.
Shane. The relationships that you earn are your most valuable career assets. That's one. Two, in addition to your vast musical training and experience, I'm assuming that you are a super genius and that your music is just phenomenal. But it's equally important to have a broad working understanding of the business
Hmm.
of being a creative professional so that you have the tools to monetize these skills in a way that you can have an enduring career. You need to have a real working functional understanding of intellectual properties, copyright, contractual rights, licensing, publishing, royalties. That knowledge is an essential tool for success. Without that knowledge, I'd be tearing tickets at a tilt-a-whirl.
Which I appreciate both of those answers so much because one, the one that you just gave, it is so important to realize there's a lot of different pieces that go into a career than just the very specific thing that you're doing. And being able to understand that like there's a lot of different pieces and aspects of a job. And you can't, you know, just decide, well, I'm not going to put the effort into that one or do the work with that one. It's a full-fledged thing that you have to be able to do. And I work with college students all the time who are hoping to get jobs, and it's just like you have to do the work. And even if it's the little things that probably aren't the most fun part of the job, but you still have to do them. And then absolutely the first thing is everything is about interacting with people. And you can have the greatest musical skills in the world, you can have the best skills in whatever you're doing, but if people don't want to work with you, you're probably not going to get work because not a lot of people are going to want to put up with that and being able to have those connections. So those are some
Well
wonderful
said,
words.
Shane. For example, I was not the best composer in Hollywood,
Mhm.
but I was probably the best closer.
There you go.
I knew how to get those jobs. I knew how to make sure that people felt confidence in my abilities and would trust me with that sometimes sacred responsibility of putting music to their project. Often, by the time a director, producer, writer, executive gets to the point where they're actually making this movie or play or theater production or ballet or opera, TV show, whatever it is, by the time it gets to that stage, they've been working on it for 5, 8, 10 years. They've had this project longer than they've had their kids.
Yeah.
It's that sacred and special to them. And now, after so much labor and love, they've brought this project into the world and it needs an operation. It needs something done to it. Up to this point, the writers have been able to, if there was something they wanted to change, they would change it by changing the words, or they could pick out the wardrobe or the set or the whatever it is. But music is different. It is something that they can't do and they need to trust someone else to do it. And it's part of my job to make sure that they know that I take this job seriously and that I will be extra special careful with this baby of theirs and that I will give it back to them whole with music. And that relationship building, that trust was key to my career growth. I had a couple of producers who were very busy. One in particular I'm thinking about, who a guy named Chris Thompson, who's no longer with us. But I remember him, we were working on already, we had a series on CBS, and he called me up and said, I got this new series, wall-to-wall music. a lot of music. It's going to really rely on music a lot. It was a series called Action with Jay Moore and Ileana Douglas. Really good series, by the way.
Mhm.
And he said, I have in my head already the music for every single scene in this whole series. Your job, Wolff, is to make sure you don't give it to me. You know what to do. And he hung up. And it's that kind of trust that you as a young composer need to develop, that
Yep.
the people who employ you, they just know that they can trust you. And that gives you, first of all, it gives you more latitude to be yourself, to experiment, to take risks that you may not normally be able to take if the approval process is breathing down your neck, or if your employers feel the need to tell you how the music should sound. You know, I had plenty of those producers also who would
Mhm.
say, ooh, the music should sound like, and it doesn't matter how that sentence ends because it's already derivative music. It already sounds like something else. And then
Mhm.
I would just connect the dots and take the money. But the smart directors and producers would tell me how the music should function, the way
Mhm.
Jerry Seinfeld did.
Yeah.
It needs to go along with my monologue, but not tell you how it sounds. Now, that also puts more weight on you, the composer. If it fails, if it's
Mhm.
terrible, if it doesn't work, if nobody likes it, it's all on you because you were the only one who had creative input on it. But for me, I always preferred it that way. And those directors and producers who approached the assignments that way always got my best work.
There you go. See, you all tuning into this didn't know you were going to get plenty of really valuable life lessons today, but you sure got them. But Jonathan, well, thank you so much for taking the time and chatting with me today on Scribe Talks.
Shane, it is an honor to be on Scribe Talks with you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting Scribe Magazine.